Good evening, council, staff, members of the public. May I have a mover and seconder to call the meeting to order, please? Deputy Cabral and Councillor Garwood, that the special meeting of the Council of the Township of Springwater of April 7th, 2025 come to order at 5:30 p.m. All those in favor? And that has carried. Councillor, are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest this evening? Not seeing any. I will turn to CAO for our update.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin and members of council. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to provide council and the public with an update on the status of the response to the ice storm that we have experienced and continue to experience. There are two stages to this in terms of emergency response. There's the emergency response stage, which we are currently still fully in, and then there's the recovery stage, which has not fully commenced yet. In terms of emergency response, although a large number of our population in Springwater are now serviced again with hydroelectricity, not everybody is. There are still a goodly number of households in the range of 250 households in Springwater currently today that still do not have electrical power. And we don't know when they will be fully serviced. In a quick synopsis, I should mention that this is significant weather event number 6 for the Township of Springwater since Christmas. We've had 5 significant snow events. Our first responders have been out there pulling vehicles out of snowbanks that are higher than the cars. And on one weekend, we rescued 200 people from snowbanks, which kept staff incredibly busy. But this event is an event of itself. It will surpass the ice storm event of 1998 in terms of impact on population, in terms of cost, in terms of time for recovery. It's going to take some time to fully recover. The area that has been impacted stems from Parry Sound all the way down to here and all the way through to Peterborough, a general area, over 1 million people affected. So, and the response, there are responders in terms of hydro crews and arborist crews coming in from as far away as Newfoundland, New Brunswick. The draw on services has, the mutual assistance request has gone far and wide. So in terms of the response, pretty much every resource out there is being employed and applied. So what we have tonight is we have a PowerPoint, a short history timeline, day-to-day timeline, and the chief is going to walk us through that timeline, and then we'll have reports from each of the departments in terms of what has occurred and what is currently occurring in terms of their response levels in order to keep the public safe as we move forward. So we'll hear from Parks and Facilities, we'll hear from Finance, and then we'll close off with Public Works. And then from there, after we provide that general information session, if there's any questions, we can move on to a discussion of response. And one of the topics is cleanup of the brush. So we hope to move into that once we get through the information session. So with that, if we could, I wouldn't mind handing the meeting over to the chief.
Thank you. Chief Kirk?
Through you, Mayor, to the rest of council and the public in the audience here. I'm going to take you through what the CEO alluded to, our response during this ice storm. Next slide, please. So Thursday, we were actively engaged with emergency preparedness, and we were on several weather meetings with Environment Canada, as is the norm these days. We were then briefed in those meetings, and we prepared weather preparedness statements. So the township was actively engaged in putting that stuff on our website, and just getting storm preparedness messaging out. I can't stress enough, we've been in the emergency management field, we always preach 72 hours, be self-sufficient for 72 hours. You know, having a kit, having a plan. Some things that we look for in a kit is wind-up radios, battery operated radios, battery packs for your cell phones, water, food, that sort of thing, to be self-sufficient for at least 72 hours. So these are some of the things that we had on our website. And we were hoping, unfortunately, with a lot of people out of power, that potentially proved to be an issue with the messaging. So next slide, please. So on Friday, March 28th, the deputy and I had met, and the deputy fire chief declared an enhanced category for our emergency operations center. That is not to say we were looking at declaring an emergency, but we were under, at that point, we figured a significant weather event. To be clear on why we did not declare an emergency, one of the first things we look at is such things as critical infrastructure. So Dan was contacted about our critical infrastructure, and we knew it was up and running on backup power. So there was no fear for our residents with the water and wastewater. We thought we could handle this with the resources we had and those that were summoned at a later time. So we decided to stay in the enhanced category for our EOC. We maintain continuous vigilance in storm preparedness and again, public communications. We were fully committed and actively participating in the storm readiness and effective outreach strategy. So we were having quite a number of weather meetings with Environment Canada and getting what the future potentially was going to bring us. Next slide, please. So on Saturday, March 29th, weather alert monitoring began. We were tracking ongoing weather updates and advisories from Environment Canada. It's interesting to note that we don't just rely on Environment Canada. We have two other weather sources that the deputy and myself constantly look at, and we take the worst case scenario to make our decision making. The timeline started for Springwater Fire and Emergency Services at about 11:01 a.m. for down power lines. That soon escalated to a situation on Malta in Midhurst that we had high voltage lines down, and I'll show you that on the next slide. And then we were getting reports of some widespread power outages reported across the township. Next slide, please. So response efforts by numbers. So from Saturday to Saturday, so March 29th to April 5th, we responded to 110 calls for service. To put that in perspective, that's about 1/6 of our annual call volume. So within there, we assisted with 2 mutual aids for structure fires in Oro-Medonte, and we also had an additional structure fire in the township here. We also responded to a chimney fire, and as well, we responded, unfortunately, to numerous CO calls, carbon monoxide related incidents related to incorrect positioning of generators. And in some cases, we came across people barbecuing in their kitchen, using their gas stoves for heat, and using hibachis. So the word was out. It was quite clear. We sent out messaging about the proper use of those devices. and I'll later touch on the education when we started doing our wellness checks. Fire crews were engaged up to 36 consecutive hours. So we were running from one incident to the next. And dispatch operations for us in Barrie, they were inundated to the point where their system had gone down. And the gentleman to my left, our deputy, he actually dispatched our fire department for 48 hours through his iPad device that he has in his vehicle. On the community support end of things, we commenced our wellness checks, and during those wellness checks, we did this internally, and we captured 1,000+ people, and we also had a wellness check form posted on our website that people could opt in or opt out or give us an idea of neighbors that were inclined to need help. So, I think we did a very good job of capturing those citizens with the wellness checks. Next slide, please. So Sunday, March 30th, we declared a significant weather event notification that went out. And that declaration of a significant weather event simply means that we keep up with minimum road standards, and that's it. So we do our best. So fire and emergency services response, we had teams actively responding to weather-induced emergencies. So the majority of our calls, and as you can see in those two pictures, were charged down electrical lines causing fire and causing unsafe conditions. Not only was the ground wet, we had to let them burn. And in some cases, we had to actually apply water in a safe manner. I won't get into how we do that, but that was what firefighters were faced with. They were also faced with the ground potentially being energized. So we had to keep our safe distances in combating these fires. So at 4 p.m., the EOC was closely monitoring the developments related to the ongoing ice storm. Next slide, please. So Monday, March 31st, we engaged our EOC in person, and we met. I've kind of lost track of time, but the deputy and I were meeting twice a day with the county and the provincial officials. And I believe we were doing one meeting a day at the end of each operational cycle. So that occurred usually around 4 or 5 o'clock after we had our updates from the province. So, so we were fully engaged in all the efforts. We at that point had resource allocation to be. We were able to employ several tree contractors that specialized with power lines, and then we were actively seeking through our mutual aid assistant agreements and through Emergency Management Ontario for vital equipment such as chainsaws, chippers, and other vital pieces of equipment necessary. One of the priorities we looked at right away was our roads and were they passable for emergency services so we could get to where we needed to go. We had some issues, but in working with Hydro One and our road supervisor, we were able to get a priority to those areas so the wires could be cleared and then we could safely remove tree debris. In the cases that there was no wires, our public works did a terrific job of providing the fire service access, or I should say EMS and fire access, so for public safety. We did have public support. We opened a relief center on that day to provide for charging of cell phones, getting water if you couldn't get water, and charging devices so you could stay in tune. So next slide, please. So again, Tuesday, April 1st, we again met in the Emergency Operations Center, and we had requested several different resources through Emergency Management Ontario. And then those resources were mobilized. We actually requested several resources for debris clearance, and we procured chainsaws, chippers through our mutual aid assistance agreement. We had two crews from New Tecumseh with their equipment, and obviously the private contracting firm. Plus we had municipal or MNRF firefighters. They sent 20 from the province down, which was virtually unheard of until now. So they did a wonderful job and they worked fast. However, they were not allowed to work under the power lines. So they keyed to our trail systems and that sort of thing because the trails were unsafe for the public. So plus they worked on roads with no wires or roads that didn't have wires in that vicinity. So I can't say enough for the MNRF firefighters. They did a terrific job. So we then went into assessing our roads for safety, and we were focused on public safety and restoration at that point. Again, public support and access was achieved from 8:30 till 8 at the admin center, and our communications person, Jenna Reed, was on top of all the communications through our meetings, and she did a terrific job. Again, I can't say enough for the quick performance she did in carrying out her duties in communications. So we then were hit with another gift from Mother Nature. We had another significant weather event coming in. We were told that it was slightly less than what we had just experienced, but we were looking at 4 to 8 millimeters of ice accretion and followed by strong winds. So we were not happy to hear that. But the good thing was it didn't materialize the way the model showed. However, we did, I believe that was the night we had the severe thunderstorms roll through the area. We're not sure if it was the thunderstorm or the ice event, but we did lose partial communications with the fire service, and we did lose our cell phone abilities in certain parts of the township. But we were quick to act on that, and we got emergency power up to those sites. So again, we moved quick, and we were able to mitigate what was handed to us. Next slide, please. So we again were preparing for significant weather events. We were told that the weather event would arrive midday Wednesday and continue on through Thursday. We made the decision at that point that those people that couldn't shower, we thought we'd open the community Elmville Arena once we had power up there, and we offered the same services at the Elmville Arena plus showers. Unfortunately, there was some news out on social media that we were charging for showers, and I can tell you that was clearly false. So weather event summary. The second event involved rain transitioning to snow, to freezing rain, and then to rain. So the heavy rain helped us out in regards to the ice, but it didn't help us in regards to potential flooding. Next slide, please. So Thursday, April 3rd, you can see the hydro crews in that video working away to secure some lines. Again, the relief centers were open for both days. They were staffed by township staff. We were focusing on roadways and areas like trails and parks, like I mentioned, and that was done through the securing of MNRF firefighters through EMO. We also had a request for assistance for other agencies through EMO. And the MNRF incident commander and staff deployed to Springwater for storm cleanup and relief. And they completed and demobilized late Saturday afternoon for a rest break, and then they were being redeployed elsewhere. So the second significant weather event occurred with rain switching to snow, freezing rain, mid to late afternoon and through to the late evening. Heavy rains and thunderstorms impacted that region and this region, sorry. And it made the heavy downpours. We saw 50 plus millimeters of rain and severe lightning, and it hampered our crews actually getting around. I responded from Oro-Medonte, and I had to make several attempts on the roadways to get past. And the rain was just, it was coming down fast and furious. I've never seen rain like that before. So next slide, please. So Friday, April 4th, Allenville Arena Relief Center, the operation hours were 8:30 to 8, and they were providing essential support and resources for affected residents. We again continue with our public communication efforts, and we issued warnings on significant flooding. And that picture that you see is Glengarry Road. That's Glengarry on a good day because the following day, I think the water was over the roadway. We actually had a picture of two deer standing out. It looked like they were walking on water. And unfortunately, when I was down doing the flood assessment, we had another potential event for fire. We had a lot of kayakers going out into the frigid waters. So anyways, I just thought that was rather interesting. So we did timely alerts to the residents prone to the flooding areas, and we gave them guidance and disseminated information on public safety and preparedness at that time. Next slide, please. So Saturday, April 5th, power restoration and cleanup efforts were ongoing. Hydro One were doing their initiatives. They were keying on priority areas. And we were getting reports of, we were getting calls why it was taking so long for hydro. And those discussions were ongoing through the county EOC along with the provincial officials. And at that time, we learned that the reason for the lengthy power outage was the actual destruction to the feeder lines throughout the county. So without those feeder lines up and running, they could not get power to households. So again, I want to ensure the public and council that during this whole event, we were unified in our approach. And we were coordinating our efforts through Hydro One, Emergency Management Ontario, and our operational leads in the fire service, and also through our different departments within a municipality. So the focus moving forward is clearing roads, access, and restoring critical infrastructure. I don't think, and I turn to our Director of Public Works, but I think all roadways are passable now at the moment. So I have to say that because we have strong winds predicted for tonight. So the township, I need everybody to understand that when we encounter trees down and there's power lines in the vicinity, we have to treat those lines as live for safety reasons, obviously. And we can't go near those until Hydro One has made them safe. So that was the case The one that comes to mind was Doran Road and Finley Mill. We had that area kind of blocked off, and we were waiting Hydro's attendance before our public works people could take care of that. And once they were deemed safe, it was a matter of, it was a quick get the tree off the road and get the arterial roads back open. We really, and I'll let Trevor speak to this, but I don't know how we're going to put an estimate on the duration through cleanup efforts. There's a lot of debris out there, and we are working long days to get the job done. So next slide, please. So Hydro One has been working since this event 24/7. Unless it's not safe to do so, and that was the case through the severe lightning storm. Again, we were in two times a day, we were in contact with Hydro One and provincial officials. And again, there was just the focus on clearing road access and restoring critical infrastructure. In our case, none of our critical infrastructure was in jeopardy. So next slide, please. And this is some of the crews that were out, the hydro crews. They were really working diligently, and we were, you know, the deputy was paying them visits. At one point, the mayor was out visiting hydro crews. So we were just trying to keep their spirits up because they knew the impact that this has had on communities and surrounding municipalities. I can say this event is of the same magnitude, if not greater, from what we're hearing, as if anybody recalls the 1998 ice storm. So the resources were really taxed. Ontario Hydro had 30 plus subcontractors in. As far away as there was some states, New Brunswick, Saskatchewan, and Quebec were all in helping. Plus, you know, companies like Black and Mac and all those larger contractors that do work for them. So they were throwing everything they could at this event. So, and that concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, we would be happy to answer your questions.
Thank you. And CEO, is the intent to have questions department by department, or did you want to go through?
We could go through each presentation, but we're at the hands of council. If they have an immediate question, we can take the question.
Council, any questions for Chief Kirk at this time? We can move on to our next department,
I would suggest Parks and Facilities.
Parks and Facilities. Manager Dean?
Thank you, Mayor Colgan, through yourself to the rest of council and the public. So from a Parks and Facilities standpoint, our crews have been out in partnership with the MNRF since, so the MNRF, so the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry team, first came on site with us. We met with them last Wednesday, and then they deployed into our parks and trails. So they have helped our park staff in priority trails, so neighborhood parks, community parks, and our major trail systems. So our Hickling Trail system, our North Simcoe Rail Trail system, some of our nature trails through some of the communities, and up in the Grenfell and Center Vesper area in some of our pathways and connecting parks there, as well as our major parks. So our own crews are out in our community and neighborhood parks as well, helping to remove down trees and unsafe trees from areas. So between working with the MNRF and some other contracted resources. Any trees that are hazardous and can be removed currently are being removed. There is a lot of hazardous trees that remain out in the area. As we drive through the township, you'll see there is many trees that are now missing the upper half and or more of the trees that will have to continue to be considered for removal efforts as we move through the different areas. There's a lot of township woodlots as well as properties in the township. So some being township parks and open spaces, others being county forest areas where our teams are just currently doing all full assessments and cleanups in those areas. From a facility standpoint, the facilities were checked to ensure no damages to facilities, and again, that the critical facilities were up and running and available for the staff and communities where needed, whether it be for warming and relief centers or here at the township and at our other yards for operations. In conjunction with fire and emergency services and many staff throughout the township, wellness checks were also completed. So those started last Thursday with great support from many of our volunteer firefighters as well as our staff throughout the township. And between Thursday and the end of the day Saturday, over 1,000 households were touched, as well as many other residents out and about along those tours. So there was checks on them for wellness to make sure everything was okay. It helped us determine areas where power was out. It also provided opportunities for staff to speak to residents, see how things are going, but provide education. So generator education was provided, some cleanup, yard cleanup education was provided, and just any other communications that could be provided from that standpoint for those that still may not be able to touch base within other means of communication. So those are some of the main focuses the Parks and Facilities team had in conjunction with our emergency services team.
Any questions for Manager Dean on this? I think I would like to highlight at this time the collaboration between Manager Dean, Chief Kirk, and Deputy French. I think that Manager Dean's title is now going to be Logistics Coordinator within the township. I'll wrap up at the end with a sincere thank you, but the three of you have really, I don't know, I think you've gone home for a couple hours here and there, but thank you for your efforts in coordinating this. So back to our CAO for our next appointment.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. And I would add that in the parks and facilities, there's work currently being done to clean up the tree fall in the cemeteries. And there may be some parks in the Stone Manor Woods area that we will have to close just because they're in a dangerous situation right now. They were to be assessed today, I believe. So there may be communications coming out to that effect until such time as we can get crews in there to render them safe. I would suggest finance.
And before I do go direct to Director Bredard, if I can just ask Manager Dean to elaborate. We did receive calls when residents were seeing crews in cemeteries and in parks. And if we can highlight why we deployed resources to those areas, please.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through yourself to council and everyone else joining us tonight. So crews were deployed to priority areas for many different reasons. So some of the crews that were enlisted, as well as our park staff, are trained in certain settings and in certain areas. Our MNN, the partnership we had with MNRF, as mentioned by the chief, they do not work around any hydro lines as they're again deemed to be active until otherwise told to. They're also trained to be out in very remote areas working in forest fire situations. So they are not trained in very urban areas and or working around power lines. So they are quite comfortable in the middle of a bush and they will take down a 120-foot tree if needed, but they're not used to working around residential properties. So they have different chainsaw and rigging training than others would have. So they were sent to priority locations that are also public safety concerns, knowing the weather is changing, knowing where people are trying to get out and about, and knowing that there is a lot of hazardous obstacles high in the air that not everybody is looking for. So when people go to the playground, they're not necessarily looking up. So those resources were deployed to those areas from that standpoint. Again, the township oversees a cemetery in Midhurst 1st, and it saw significant damage into the cemetery. So that was assessed from a standpoint of all of the structures within the cemetery, as well as from a hazard standpoint, and knowing that there's operations that have to occur at the cemetery from any point. So again, some of the contracts that we have that are available to work in those types of settings and are trained in those types of settings have been deployed there, while the other focuses are within our Public Works Department, which Director Harvey will speak to.
Thank you for that. Director Bedard?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. As CEO Heron mentioned, there's two stages to the emergency management operations we have going on right now. There's the response and the recovery. As you can imagine, from a finance perspective, we're not actively engaged in the response. We're not on the front lines. We're more into the recovery, but that said, there's a lot that finance does to make sure that we can accurately and timely report on the cost associated with the ice storm event, so we can present that information for council's consideration. And we can also present that information to the province to determine eligibility in the Municipal Disaster Relief Assistance Program. Walk through a few instances of what we've done to ensure we can timely and accurately report on these costs incurred. The first is we've set up a separate general ledger account for ice storm related expenditures. So as Director Harvey will allude to during his time at the microphone, a number of services we've had to procure to address our response. So we've set up that separate general ledger account to segregate those expenses to make reporting easy and timely. In terms of incremental costs, so as was mentioned, we've had to run on backup power at our water and wastewater facilities. So, diesel, these are incremental costs above and beyond what we would normally use those facilities, given that they predominantly run on hydro. So these incremental costs will be recorded so that we can determine the cost increase for some of these things we normally procure, but we've had to procure more as a result of the ice storm. Springwater Fire and Emergency Services already tracks their call volume. However, for calls associated with the ice storm, we're tracking those, and we're going to be able to assign a cost for our response times and account for those to the ice storm account. In terms of payroll, we're tracking both time spent that staff would normally be paid for during their regular scheduled shifts, as well as overtime that's applicable. So any overtime that's a direct relation to the ice storm, that's above and beyond what we would normally pay our staff for, and we're tracking those. But also in terms of the regular hours staff are putting in, that's lost productivity to the township, where they're not contributing to their regular day-to-day operations. They've had to set that aside, and for a number of us, it's been full days so far. So that's an important cost for council to consider. It's a cost that the township would have to pay anyway, but it's a significant cost in terms of lost productivity and lost opportunity to move regular township business forward. The last component I'll mention is we're also tracking damage to township infrastructure. So above and beyond what might be captured by the township's insurance program, as we move towards the recovery phase of the ice storm operations, we're going to be looking at township infrastructure, what may have been damaged as a result of the ice storm, and whether that infrastructure would be covered through our township insurance program or whether that would be an additional cost to us. And the importance of recognizing any damage to township infrastructure is if it was damaged as a result of the storm and it's not eligible through our insurance or covered through insurance, that may be a cost that's eligible to be applied to the Provincial Disaster Relief Fund. So we need to determine what that cost is to build up a damaged asset to the state that it was before the storm.
Any questions for Director Bedard? Deputy Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Just one with respect to the overtime aspect. Our staff being those dollars might qualify for the disaster relief fund, but our staff also being given the opportunity to save time as lieu hours, because that impacts us down the road as well. So that's just the only question I have with respect to the ongoing costs.
Director Bedard?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through you to Deputy Mayor Cabral. The overtime would be based on their agreement, based on classification of employee. So whether they're management and we already have management hours in lieu of overtime, or whether those hours per their collective agreement need to be paid out, or whether they would be banked, it would be determined by their classification of employment.
Follow on?
Thank you. I guess, given this is not normal circumstances, I just trying to find out. So if they did put them in the lieu time bank, the expectation would be that staff would be given the opportunity to utilize those hours. But then at the other side of the coin is we're behind on our regular work that's been lost productivity due to the storm. At the end of the year, if those dollars were translated back into physical dollars and payout, would we still be able to apply them to the disaster relief fund? I just, if we're putting something off down to the road that maybe qualifies for the disaster relief fund, I don't know if there's an opportunity to tell them, hey, we might come back looking for some more money.
Director Bedard?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, and through you to Deputy Mayor Cabral. I should have alluded to in my update that last week township staff met with the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing to discuss the disaster relief assistance program, and we're also meeting tomorrow with them to get an update on program eligibility. It's my understanding that all costs would be eligible for this program. That's why we're tracking the impact of whether it's banked or paid out right now, so that we have that idea of what our obligation may be. That said, there's 120 days from onset of storm to submit the initial claim. We'll get more information on reporting to the province, but it's my understanding that it may take some time for the township to fully understand the extent of the costs we've incurred. But to your original point on the hours worked, that's why we're accounting for everything right now, so that we can report that true picture to the province.
Thank you. And I think and on top of that, the eligibility requirements, the 3%. So if it's not a guarantee, and if you can just speak to, if we spend the money, we don't always necessarily get it back. So if you can speak to the eligibility criteria for that, please.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. The eligibility criteria, the simple criteria in one sentence, 3% of our annual tax levy. So that works out to approximately $510,000. That is the threshold to apply for funding. It's not a guarantee that funding will be received once we hit that threshold. So, we're incurring costs to manage the storm. As we approach, possibly exceed, we don't know that yet, but again, that just because we may exceed that, should we, it's not a guarantee that that funding would be received. There's eligibility that we would have to meet, and the province has through their initial reporting to us indicated that there's some comprehensive reporting we would have to do to substantiate our claim.
Thank you. Any further questions for finance? Councillor Thompson?
Through the chair to Director Bedard, would cleanup qualify as disaster relief funding?
Director Bedard?
Mayor Coughlin, through you to Councillor Thompson, yes, it's my understanding that the cleanup costs would qualify as an eligible expense.
Not seeing any further questions, if we can move on to Director Harvey with our Public Works team.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, to yourself, members of council and the public. I think it's important I think the chief did a very good job in his presentation with regards to what the response was from Public Works. And maybe I'll just, highlight a few of those things he mentioned. Obviously, where our priorities were, and obviously our priorities were working in conjunction with throughout our management team and EOC to ensure that our roads were obviously accessible for EMS. The process was such that we did have to wait for Hydro One to give us the all clear should there be hydro lines, but staff were deployed from day one as it relates to trying to set those priority roads, and they were based on obviously some of the arterial roads to clear those first and where our critical assets were. And so in conjunction with EMS, we worked through what those were and set criteria with our road supervisor to deploy resources where we could. Second priority that's obviously been mentioned is our critical infrastructure. And this goes back to the chief's comment as to relates to when we declare an emergency situation. And so as much as communication wasn't great in the very first hours of this, whether it be cell phones, what's one of the results of this have come out that that communication wasn't great in the initial stages. We were able to have conversations with Aqua and ensure that all of our facilities from water, wastewater were obviously on backup power. All but 2 facilities were in that state, and that would be the Elmville Water Pump House. It did not have backup power, and nor did Hillsdale, as in permanent backup power for those facilities. So Aqua deployed a backup generator that was in yard 3 to shuttle it between those facilities to ensure that the standpipes in the water system were adequately filled, so that should there be any other further response, we were in a position to obviously fight a fire or whatever the needs were of the municipality and those communities. So a couple of those things obviously come to bear in mind as we move forward and what we might want to employ as a capital going forward. Communications, again, were not great for Aqua as well, so that's related to our alarms and any kind of things in those water and critical infrastructure. What we did with Aqua was we deployed 6 and 12-hour checks of facilities where we didn't have communications to ensure that those that critical infrastructure was operating as needed. So that Aqua did deploy resources and we're doing checks. They were up till I guess Saturday doing that as well when the last of our facilities came online on utility power. Obviously, there were some other things during the initial stages related to logistical issues related to fuel at Yard 1. Became apparent that we do not have backup power there, so we deployed a backup generator to ensure that EMS had fuel as well as Public Works. So these are just some of the things that we noticed. We've obviously, they spoke of the additional chainsaws. We were able to at least get the resources on that stage that we needed initially. We've also reached out, as it is right now, to several private contract firms very early in this event. We realized that we would not be able to handle this on our own. So currently we have at least 5 contract firms that have been in and out of the township thus far. Right now we have 3 major ones. We have 3, without naming names, we have 3 tree expert services deployed right now, as well as we have a Great All and 2 dump trucks working on cleanup. As mentioned, we've had New Tech come in and help us. So if through mutual aid, they were responded and sent us 2 crews. They did a lot of work on Berry Hill Road and a few other very severe areas and did some of the cleanup. We've also obviously have our 2 yard crews doing work as well. So both Yard 1 and Yard 2 have been deployed by the supervisor to areas that we feel were the most critical to start with. And we're potentially looking at, securing some other capital resources. Right now, we just have been able to get a new chipper. It was in the budget for this year, so we've now expedited that procurement and under emergency situation and got ourselves a new chipper for Yard 2. We have one. And that's sort of the update to now. As I mentioned, we're keeping track of time in Public Works yards for everybody on their timesheets and hoping that this event can be tracked from a financial point of view as well. It's obviously a bit of a moving target, but we're still in response mode. The cleanup and those sorts of things are starting to be initiated and thought about in the recovery, but the cleanup we've been doing thus far has been more in the areas and the roads that were of major access to our critical infrastructure.
Thank you, Director Harvey. Any questions for Director Harvey or Public Works? Not seeing any. Before I turn back to our CAO, I think that the onset and the efficiency that this group took to procure the goods and services, the essential goods and services, I think that's why we've been so successful, obtaining contracts for fuel, making sure that we had the access to keep our generators up and going. It was a job well done, and utilizing your vast networks to encourage people to come and assist us. Thank you very much for that. And also, I think when Director Harvey was speaking about being able to get things like chainsaws, we have local vendors who were opening their doors after and before hours to make sure that we were getting what we needed. So we've had a lot of assistance along the way. So I will turn back to CEO Heron.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. And I would add, it's worthwhile noting to council and the public that from the moment the chief and the deputy fire chief triggered the Emergency Operations Center, it was, in my mind, and it was my first experience at such a level of managing a crisis, incredibly impressive. The systematic way that it's done is the group would go through department by department. What do we know and what do we not know? What resources do we need? Which ones do we have to hit first? And there were issues that would come up in day two where there's no power at the water pumping facilities and the wastewater facilities. Well, we need to get fuel oil there. Okay, where's the fuel oil? Well, we're not sure if the people delivering the fuel oil even have electricity to get it there. So the trickle down problem solving was impressive. And this went from day to day to day, and we met every day, and every day was a moving target because there were new resources coming on stream. There were new problems arising. There were new information. What areas were without power, which were the roads that we absolutely needed to get cleared with hydro so we can get fire response in there if necessary. And we are at a point now where we are still in emergency response, but there's a much better understanding and control, and we've acquired the resources, not as much as we could use, but we've acquired what is available to us. So I really have to commend the Emergency Operations Center and everybody who is on that crew. It was impressive from the closing of the first meeting to opening up the next meeting the next day, how much work had been done to advance the response. So anyway, with that, we should probably move on to the discussion about recovery mode. We are aware that as you drive around the settlement areas, the residents have been diligent in bringing broken limbs and twigs out to the street. If you drive around Midhurst, you can see that it's been done in a very ordered and responsible manner. The twigs are all butt first out onto the road right of way. So although staff haven't had the fulsome opportunity to figure out what we're going to do, we are well aware that, there is the opportunity to take some action to help with the next step, which is cleanup. We anticipate that the Easter weekend from now till then will be a very busy weekend for the residents to continue to, bring more wood out and clear their yards, with neighbors helping other neighbors who may not have the full some ability to clear their yards, which is typically a Canadian thing to do. You help your neighbor. But so staff do anticipate that there will be a need to haul that wood away. To some extent, the county has come to the fore. They've opened up a new tree waste yard or wood waste yard on Gill Road. That was opened today. And there is quite a heavy use. A lot of the public are bringing trailer loads of wood there currently as we speak. So some cleanup is occurring. We anticipate that the biggest questions would be when would the service be provided, if council directs us to do that? How would the service occur? And how long will it take and what will it cost? We do not have at this point in time solid answers to those questions. We can advise that any operation the town would trigger would be after the Easter long weekend, at some point after the Easter long weekend. staff through Trevor and his team have made some initial queries in terms of what type of equipment might be available. So how would we do it? Would be a chipper? Would we pick it up and haul it away to a yard? All of these are options that we can use. I'm going to turn it over to Director Harvey to get into some of the detail in terms of cost versus hiring a contractor to do it versus if we do it. Key things to consider is that if the Public Works staff do it, they have fulsome duties to get ready for next winter with gravel crushing and so on. So it will impact our day-to-day operations if they're doing the work. That's a key consideration. There's the cost. And another consideration is most of the contractors are currently fully involved with the response. So finding a contractor to do that work is going to be another issue. I'm not suggesting it's not solvable. It will be solvable. We just don't have a fulsome answer for it at this point. So if I could, I would like to transfer it over to Mr. Harvey.
Director Harvey?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, members of council and the public. I guess I was more thinking of what the question might be from council, but suffice it to say, we were looking and just generalizing in the settlement areas what this cleanup effort might look like. From a resource point of view, we more than likely would have to procure the private sector to do this. I think to the CAO's comments, interim CAO's comments, our work plan would be severely impacted if we had to do that with our resources. Obviously, we have other options or things to do, from grading roads to, sweepings coming up, all these sorts of activities that are in the work plan for Public Works. They would have to be foregone for some time period until such time as we do this cleanup. So we were thinking it more than likely would be some sort of similar grade-all operation that we have there with a grapple and pick up a lot of this debris, put it in trucks and perhaps bring it either to the bin center or, if it's available, the new wood deployment area that the county has on Gill Road. So, we have a rough idea of the operation that might take place, but the amount and the time frame is very difficult because each property and street will be different than the other. But we were trying to, put together some time frames, and we were looking at roughly, 2 hours a street, because obviously things have to be traversed somewhere for the dumping site. So, we were hoping to reach out to a contractor and get a rough price, but the scope hasn't been completely defined. But suffice it, if we did the settlement areas in the township, it's going to be substantial. It's more than likely going to be, 3 to 4 weeks to do a complete cleanup and something to that effect. That's the sort of time frame we're looking at. Maybe less, depending on how much the private citizens are doing, but it's very hard to get a figure on that. So that's kind of where we sit, and we certainly can go forward if council would, that would be their direction, and we could get some costs related to that.
Councillor Fisher and then Deputy Cabral.
Thank you. First off, I do want to thank staff. I think I can speak for all up here from council. You guys have been stretched to the brink, and it's actually been pretty amazing to see you perform and keep performing under these conditions. So you definitely deserve some real accolades. I also wanted to thank, frankly, citizens. In my neighborhood, it was amazing the morning after to see so many citizens coming out, helping, cleaning up roads. It wasn't coordinated. They just came out and helped. So I think often bad situations sort of show the best in people, right? So that was something I noticed and many noticed. But I did want to say, as we transition from a emergency situation to a cleanup situation, I definitely want to see us advocate for Springwater residents, and myself in Ward 5, Midhurst, that was hit very hard. It's my strong position that citizens do need assurance that we will be there to assist them. And I've spoken to many residents, and they're very level-headed with this, they realize that it won't be tomorrow, or they realize that it probably won't be this week, right? They do realize, and I think we need to measure expectations with them, that if their municipality is to answer the call, and I believe we should, it will be something that happens after we've concluded with the emergency situation. It's come to my attention that actually some people still don't have power in Springwater, some places. So it's my hope that from the meeting tonight we can give our assurance. We might not know what it looks like, but give cleanup assurance and commitment to our residents that we would be moving ahead with something. I'd also frankly like to see maybe in the next little while parameters set on what that is. So again, we can manage expectations. And another thing I'd actually like to see is open burn permits for people with rural properties. If we could waive the fees for those permits, maybe farmers and people like this, I think that would actually help alleviate a lot of the assistance we would have to give. But I'm certainly strongly in favor of moving ahead with assistance.
Deputy Cabral?
Well, thank you, Mayor Coughlin, and certainly to echo what Councillor Fisher said, and I guess all of council here, we knows what we've been through. The thing is, it's not a unique situation to Springwater Township, you know. It's Oro-Medante's in the same boat. If you've been up through Tiny Township, it's a bit of a horror show all the way up through there too. So that's the one piece. So I can understand acquiring the equipment and the resources necessary, be them from private contractors or mutual aid, is still very difficult to do. When we talk about our own staff doing it, I could see our staff, you know, doing some of the, you know, rural roadways. That stuff can sit there for an awful long period of time before it needs to be removed. As far as impacting traffic and stuff like that goes. But when you're in the urban settlement areas, it's a different story. So I would like to kind of see, as Councillor Fisher has said, some kind of assurance to our residents that Township will assist them. But I think it's also important for residents to try and do as much as they can to minimize the demand on Township, because at the end of the day, it's tax dollars and even just relief dollars that are going to be utilized to help move the recovery portion forward. With respect to the whole idea there, it's kind of like just a big blob in front of me right now on how you move forward with this. So I would suggest maybe that council, if they're able to, would be able to provide some direction to staff in sitting back, getting together a bit of a team, and maybe putting together some options, some estimated costs, some time frame for us, so that you can come back to council. We can feel comfortable going forward that we actually know what we're going to accomplish and how we're going to get that done. And I would say too, I want to give a shout out to the farmers, because some of those guys were out there with their tractors and pickups and stuff, pulling trees off the roads. Not all everywhere, but they certainly were doing that, and they were lending a hand as other citizens were to one another. And I want to say thank you to Councillor Fisher for recognizing that farmers tend to look after their own deal, but there's going to be a lot of lumber on the farms to be burnt, so maybe that might be something that can be considered going forward, to waive the fee for the open burn permit, so that they can get rid of that and not necessarily contribute to dragging it all the way up to Gill Road or dragging it all the way to the county dump to be chipped up and used again. They might be able to deal with it on their own. So those are my comments. I hope council might want to suggest something that as far as options for staff to move forward with resources.
Councillor Thompson, and then ICCAO, and then I'll come back. Okay.
Through the chair to Director Harvey. Actually, first of all, I want to thank staff as well. Chief Kirk and your team, I was able to see firsthand the great work that you do and your wellness checks and keeping the warming centers open. I think you did an amazing job, and want to thank you for your continued support for our community. This question is for Director Harvey. I received notice from the county on garbage pickup today for tomorrow's my collection day. And they, in the notice, I scrolled down and they said more information will be coming from the county with regards to increasing their yard waste pickup. The county is our yard waste collector. Have they given us any information that they're going to assist on picking up branches at all?
Through you, Mayor Coughlin, to Councillor Thompson. We're not aware of anything at this point. I think that's still a bit of a fluid situation, but suffice it to say, my understanding is that the county will continue to do what they've always done as it relates to yard waste and the specific criteria as it relates to size and dimensions and it being twined. Yard waste is a different critter. I think that, my understanding is the county's communicated that the yard waste for now is going to be deferred, and it's going to be more related to some of this brush cleanup. That's what we know to date from the county. What we're talking about here tonight, I think, is related to what the township might employ. And just for council's benefit, we have set up at the Min Center here a bit of a wood debris dump site, for lack of a better term, just the other side of these spruce trees here. What council needs to keep in mind is whatever we do bring here, we will need to grind up at some point, probably bring some sort of tub grinder and deploy these, this debris into chips. So that's a cost that will also have to be taken into consideration in the future.
And I'm just gonna, for clarification, Director Harvey, so our frontline staff doesn't get a whole bunch of calls tomorrow. The debris that is coming here is not open to the public. It is simply for our crews so that we're not waiting in lines at dumps. We are simply housing it here so that we can get back out there faster. So this is an internal operation. If you would like to clarify that for me, please.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Yes, that's correct. That is something, though, I was just pointing out what happened with this potential cleanup. Should we want the township, should council give direction to do that, we would need to obviously try and have that done here or perhaps at the County Gill Road site. But yes, this is for our own internal township cleanup.
And further to Councillor Thompson's question, we are definitely advocating at the county, ourselves, or Medonte and Severn together as three of the hardest hit municipalities, which the county is responsible for. So we have been in communications with Director McCullough, ensuring that we are asking them to do more to assist us, more than just deferring the yard waste to allow for more room. We are currently trying to work with them. We have our county meeting tomorrow morning, so I'm sure that we will be advocating for that again tomorrow during that meeting. But the county is trying to respond, but again, is still in the response, not recovery stage. So those conversations haven't fully happened countywide yet. And I had CA O'Haron and then back over to Councillor Alexander and Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Your Worship. If I could also add to Councillor Thompson's question before I respond to the deputy mayors. We are in regular contact with Waste Management at the county, and whatever the county comes up with in terms of solutions for hauling away some of the wood, that may well factor into whatever plan staff come up with for a local effort to also haul away the wood waste. That's yet to be seen. In terms of staff reporting back with a report to council in terms of what would that cleanup program look like, cost estimates, timeframes, operational methodologies. In order to report back to council, we would have to have a fulsome program ready for this Thursday to get it onto the agenda next week, which we won't be able to do because we're still in full response mode. So the next available council meeting, I think, is May 2nd or 3rd, if memory serves, which puts us another week past the Easter weekend. We can certainly meet that timeline if that satisfies council. I just wanted to advise you of the timeframes we're looking at.
Thank you. And as understanding that right now, I think our residents are looking for reassurance. They're just looking for clarity on what we're going to do, how we're going to help, what they need to do, how we're going to do this together. I think that having a special meeting in the interim is quite simple for us to do, not to push this off to the 2nd of May. In discussion with our Fire and Emergency Services team, typically they start to see an increased call of birding right after Easter weekend when everybody's cleaning up. Things get a little drier. Right now it is incredibly wet out there, and our resources, and like we said, even if we wanted to pull contractors in, I think that what our residents are looking for is for us to make the initiative to direct staff to look for costs and securing it, timelines, that type of thing. So I think that as long as we continue to be clear and concise with our residents and listen and be responsive, I think, as Councillor Fisher alluded, the expectations are not ridiculous. It's just questions. And a lot of the emails that we're getting are simple, what are you going to do? And right now they're not satisfied with, I don't know yet. So it's just us, taking it and not rushing through. We do need to be respectful of those 280 homes plus that still don't have hydro. And we need to ensure them that our focus as a community and as a township is to ensure that they get hydro before we move into the recovery stage. So I think that having this conversation is good. Not knowing exactly what we can do or what resources we do have. I think with the significant flooding, suggesting that we're going to use our own crews, we'll have lots of farmers that would be concerned about losing crops, not getting to the ditches, which are more full this year than have been previously. So there's a significant work plan that needs to be put in place. And it's, residents who thought we were going to be coming out tomorrow to collect it are saying, I haven't even had time to bring it to the road. So being mindful that everyone's got a different work pace. We have seniors who, are going to be relying on neighbors and potentially contractors to bring that out to the road. So finding that time when we start this and how we do it, because we're not doing it twice. We can't do it once for everybody who's ready today and the next time for those who didn't do it. So I think that finding an equitable solution, and it's, being mindful that we do have areas that have more significant damage than others, and coming up with how we systematically move it across the township to ensure that those who are more significantly hit get that assistance and relief first and move our way across the township. So I think that I will move now to Deputy
Just a follow.
a follow on Deputy Cabral.
Just a quick one, and I'm just gonna reiterate that apparently we're still in the initial stages of control. And from what I understand from staff, they're not going to be in a position to really do any recovery until after the Easter weekend. So I'm wondering if that still plays into providing them some direction to come back after that. So that was the only comment I wanted to make, is I think it's still a plausible plan to move forward. And if there's more urgency, maybe we can look at it, another special meeting like this one.
Thank you, Ness. I agree that because our next regular meeting is the week after, I think residents are going to be looking for a more solid plan prior to that. Councillor Alexander?
Councillor Thompson actually asked my question, so thank you. And I am happy to hear that the discussions are there with the county, because I do feel they definitely should be playing a part in this, especially considering they're in charge of the waste management. So they have the tools that we potentially don't have. So that's very good to hear. Again, with respect to the cost, the effort, obviously this is a huge job, and is going to cost us a lot of money. End of the day, this is what our job is in my mind as a township. It's for these events. It's municipal, it's provincial government that come and do this stuff. So kudos to all of staff for everything that's been done thus far. But happy that we're all on the same page up here and, looking to figure out the best way to move forward with this. I do have a question that goes back a couple that's not really on this topic, if I could just quickly ask, and I think it would be to Chief Kirk. Just when we were talking about the communication with that went out with respect to residents, do we do any type of radio communication given that internet was down? Our main normal communication methods, people wouldn't have had availability to.
Chief Kirk?
Through you, Mayor, to Councillor Alexander, that we did do media radio ads or radio messaging, sorry. We understood the ramifications for the communication being down and internet being down. However, we do use the radio stations. The unfortunate thing, and this is not a point your finger at the radio stations, but they'll take tidbits, right? So it's hard to get the full message across at times. So
And I think on top of that, our EOC team was reaching out to CTV News. We were reaching out to anybody who would give us some airtime. And we were not successful in receiving some of those interviews that we were prepared to do and some communication for the residents on air. But as far as really, it was just sporadic radio that was being picked up on there. Councillor, anything further, Councillor Alexander? Councillor Garwood?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. And again, on to that point there too, I think with so many municipalities in a similar position, I'm sure it's challenging to get a hold of all of those media outlets. But first, again, I think it's been echoed up here. It's more of a statement than anything. I want to send a huge thanks out to our entire Springwater staff. Fire and emergency services, I continue to be incredibly amazed and got to witness just a little bit of what you guys do in a day, so thank you. When it comes to the response and the recovery, and I'm happy to hear there's a relatively united front at this table. I think that's what our residents need to see, is this council come together and be able to present that unified messaging. But what I'd like to really push home is the fact that we are still in that response effort. We still do have over 250 homes, many residents without the ability to probably even access the internet right now, or even stay warm in the evening. So I'm happy to see that we have our warming stations and our relief centers still open and available throughout the week, which is so important. But something that I'll also mention is the ongoing flooding that's occurring across our municipality. I know that's not new. It almost hit every corner. Up in Elmville, we have many residents that have been significantly impacted once again. So that's another item on top of everything that they're battling right now. I'd be happy to support direction to staff to report back and look at those program costs associated and to have a meeting as well to have those discussions again. I think that united front and increased messaging is so important.
Okay, Councillor Moore.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. First, of course, I'd like from Ward 4 especially to say thank you so much. I saw emergency response in our neighborhood. I saw new tech in our neighborhood. We had private contractors in our neighborhood. And most importantly, our residents, so fantastic. They went door to door themselves and they know who's alone. They know who's vulnerable. And so I want to say just a sincere thank you to them because they really did keep people safe as well. To Manager Dean, I wanted to ask about the Grenfell Cemetery, which is volunteer run. And if there is any room to include the Grenfell Cemetery in the cleanup because it was hit really hard. And if there is an opportunity to provide some assistance over there, it would be really appreciated. And I wondered too, I know we created a way for residents to fill out a form and opt in if they were looking for some assistance. Going forward with the cleanup, if they could continue maybe to do that as well. We do have some seniors who live alone, particularly women who cannot, and maybe they've hired privately to get the stuff from the backyard to the front, to the road, but maybe they can't bundle it up themselves. They can't sort of manage all of this work themselves. And I've had several ladies call me crying. They're just overwhelmed. So if there's a way that we could even show some compassion with our seniors and provide some assistance, I think if we can provide an opt-in for something like that, I'd really support it. Thank you.
And it was this morning at the group and even previously looking to community volunteer groups. So offering through our high schools for those who are looking for community hours to connect them with people who are in need. Reach out to our junior farmers who are often ready to go. So we're looking to employ those, I don't want to say employ, to help connect those who are in need and those who are able to help with no machinery, chief, just rakes and manpower. So I'm really looking for different ways to ensure that between now and when council decides what we're going to do, still to provide that assistance. Following, Councillor Moore?
I think that's fantastic. Exactly what I'm looking for is a way to compile a list of folks. You know, in my day job, we have lists of vulnerable people. So when the power goes out, we know who to reach out to. And, you know, so I think if we can create something so that folks can attach themselves, that would be great.
And I do have a list here, but that really leads to the initiative of our IT department and our planning department. And if you could maybe just elaborate on that a little, CAO. Essentially, we have our GIS is looking to, they're creating it. Unfortunately, Hydro, we weren't able to learn property by property who is out. So even when we were deploying our wellness checks, it was really going based on road patrollers, what we had learned, are these lights on because of generators? So it was really guessing. So we went to a lot of homes that did have power on, but we're still very appreciative that we were there to check in and make sure, looking for things. First was oxygen, medication, access to food. So really deploying that, and it was really well received. But our planning department and our IT department, with the assistance of our roads departments and essentially the whole team, has come up with a map that they're using internally right now that they are going to make available to the public to show where these crews are. So it's going to be red, yellow, and green. This is the red areas, this is where we're working, and this is the ones that have been cleared. So we're really going to have that availability, and through that, there will be an opportunity for residents to communicate through that tool. So anything to add to that, CO?
Thank you, Your Worship. There's also the municipal 211 system. Other municipalities are using that where in Springwater, we had human beings going door to door to check on people to see if they were hypothermic, to see if they were as dangerous with CO conditions and anything else they needed. We were prepared to make runs to drugstores for them. Other municipalities are not doing that themselves. They're applying the 211 system where residents can call in and ask for service or point out that their neighbors need help. And so there are other opportunities other than just the high school getting their work, their graduation work hours by helping out. There's another tool there that we could also explore, and it's something that's on our radar. And through the mapping system, it's actually really quite good. It's quite impressive what IT has pulled together in the course of 3 days. There might be opportunity as well through that to get some back and forth.
And I might just turn to either the deputy or the chief. 211 is currently available to our residents. This was just an enhanced. If you could speak to the resources through 211.
There's a lot of, through you, Mayor, there's a lot of resources available from 211. They'll link you to whatever you need. And that's just another tool in the toolbox, so to speak, when we can't get out to the residents. So, yeah. Yeah, no, we did have discussions in the EOC. Now that I think about it, is the 211 was great, but when there was no cell service or no telephones, it's kind of hard to do 211. So it was on our website, and I know, being an Oro Medonte resident, that's what they were pushing, 211 on the website. So it works great when you have a telephone, and that was not the case over the week. So
Thank you for that. Deputy Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. And to your point there, I know even with cellular service, a lot of the networks were down. ExploreNet, some people still don't have it, so their ability to connect is not there. And even on the mobile devices, those first few days, you were spotty at best to try and do anything but text or maybe make a phone call. I did have opportunity to speak with some of the Hydro One guys, and I got to tell you, they were extremely great guys, upbeat even on the busiest days. And just to give a bit of a shout out to Hydro One, because what we did was really support what they were doing to try and get the power back to people's homes. But my one question is all of our, I only saw Hydro One trucks, but I know that there are other electrical service providers. Do any other electrical service providers operate within Springwater Township, or are all of our residents Hydro One customers? I'm just curious to know that. I know that they had subcontractors working on their behalf, but I've only ever seen the Hydro One trucks. So I just was curious if we know if there are other electrical service providers working in Springwater Township as well, providing electricity. No?
Thank you.
Zeno?
Nods, it's all Hydro One.
Thank you for that. Councilors Thompson and Fisher.
Thank you. Through the chair, I'm not sure who can answer this question, but could you identify for us the pockets where the power is still out?
No. Not, sorry, and not by the advisement of Ontario Hydro. So we were able, as part of this process, because we were trying to get through to Hydro in the same fashion that residents were, Hydro One did assign us a specific point person, and maybe I'll go to there as to how we were able to better and more efficiently communicate after that. Chief Kirk?
Through you, Mayor Coughlin, there was a point person at our county CMC meetings with the provincial officials and EMO. They have recently, as of today, given fire and emergency services a priority number to be able to get through with the anticipation of the windy weather we're going to be faced with later on today. So, and just on the hydro note, this was the first time they actually employed the system that the mayor alluded to. A representative from Hydro, there was various teams around, but we had a dedicated Hydro official to us in the EOC. So it helped in restoring critical areas. The unfortunate thing was we still have areas that I don't think they know where the power outages are. So, and that's what we were up against with the wellness checks, right? We wanted to key on those areas that were out of power, and we normally use the Hydro One network to be able to go on and look. It wasn't accurate. And again, not a slight to Hydro. They were under immense pressure to try to get the systems back up. So, oh yeah, so sorry. We're up to 2,300 hydro poles now, and that just blows my mind. I'm thinking, where do you get 2,300 hydro poles? So there was a lot of devastation.
Councillor Fisher?
First of all, I just agree with the sentiments of the mayor previously. I'm not opposed to having a meeting or multiple meetings to get this under control. I do feel that May 2nd is far too far into the future to communicate with people. You know, that's nearly a month. Even if it's something we can't do, I still believe we should be communicating to them our intent so that they're assured of it. And maybe this is something I'd like to put on the floor. I would like to see us as a municipality commit to the cleanup, tell our residents that yes, we are going to do this, and refer back to staff for them to report back to us to communicate how they intend to do this, the timeline in which it would be done, and also the possibility of the open waiving the fee for the open burn permits in rural areas. Yeah, it sounds to me that council's largely in agreement here. I think that would be the best way forward. I would also like to see us meet much earlier than the 2nd. You know, even if we don't have all of the information, I think if we can have those meetings and start communicating and have the public watching and knowing that we're moving quickly towards that, and we're working through this, I would like to see that happen. So that's what I propose. So.
Thank you. Chief, would you like to speak about your favorite open burns?
Yeah, just to through you, Mayor, just to address the issue on open burns. It's my understanding, Councillor Fisher, it would be rural areas only. And my concern, I'm okay with that. My concern is that tree was alive and now it's being burnt. a week away, so it's not dry. So I can live with definitely with the rural areas. We're already getting burn complaints for the Midhurst area. We fielded 2 calls today about burning, and I had a lady actually say I should ban burning in the township, but obviously I'm not prepared to do that. But just want it known that it could increase our having to attend these properties.
And I think that was a large conversation that we had, because as our fire and emergency services start to hopefully catch break, it's the smoke that comes from the wet wood that annoys the next door neighbor. And rather than talking to your neighbor, they call 911. And the deployment of the resources, what it takes to respond to essentially a nuisance call when there is no emergency. We're not saying don't call 911 if there's a fire, but trying to find an appropriate approach so that it's not calling our guys out and girls out 5-6 times a night to deal with this. So I think that can be part of the report coming back as to waiving the fees on that. And this is much like we saw in COVID. We saw as people were starting to be either confined to their property and all they could do was have a bonfire with their bubble. We saw that same approach. So we have learned lessons through that we can apply to this situation. I had follow on from Councillor Fisher and then back over to Deputy Cabral.
Just a quick follow on. Certainly, agricultural or larger rural properties, and the goal would actually be to lessen the burden on the municipality. All right, I think of somebody with 100 acres who has several trees down and equipment to take care of it. If they're willing to do that, I think it would lessen the burden, and they certainly have certainly within settlement areas having that same bonfire. Not so much, right? So.
Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Coggan. And I have to admit, when Councillor Fisher did make mention of that, I thought he was speaking specifically about the open air burn permits, that farmers would generally be the ones that would get those because they're likely to look after their own stuff. And it would mean less going to Gill Road or wherever it needs to go. Whereas the folks that are in the settlement areas, what we're working towards here is being able to help them and assist them with the removal of the tree debris. So I guess that would be a bit of a saw off. You're doing something for the settlement areas. You give an opportunity to folks in the rural area that might be able to take care of, some of their tinderwood. So the recreational one, I don't know if I necessarily would support that.
I do see our deputy clerk typing away here. And we have that council hereby directs staff to report back on the potential costs, funding sources, methods, and estimated timelines in assisting residents in a cleanup effort of roadside brush cleanup by, and we'll insert a date, and the consideration of waiving permit fees for agricultural properties with the focus on cleanup effort prioritized to the settlement areas. And I would be looking for a timeline, and I will turn to our CAO I think that it's important for our residents to know when we could potentially reconvene on this so that they know that we're not just pushing it down the road. But I know everybody's efforts are not in report writing, but I think that this one is significant and important. So when would your suggestion be to come back? Just microphone, sorry. Just your microphone, thank you.
Oh, sorry. My apologies. I would suggest that after the Easter weekend, that would give us time to roll up the emergency response that we're currently in and give us also time to do research on hiring a contractor. It would be a special meeting, of course, but that would also shorten the time frame that we don't have to wait all the way till May 2nd.
Councillor Fisher and then Alexander.
Yeah, and I have the utmost empathy. I know we've gone through a lot. My personal feeling, and I think the sentiment I get from my residents is, again, it's not that we need to be picking up the brush. I think that the 21st, we're 2 weeks away before we have sort of a resolution for them as to what we would do. Is there any way we could meet prior to that? Again, a special meeting,
And thank you. And just looking at the calendar, if not, we have a meeting on the 16th of next, and then the following week is that. So your suggestion is that we have a report come on the 16th. Counselor Alexander?
Given the fact that, you know, all of the work that staff is currently doing, as well as all the work that is coming upon us, would it be helpful if council was agreeable to have staff look at our current agenda items and the current work on your plate and reprioritize, as I feel like this is, you know, certainly there's priority work on the agendas, I'm sure, but I'm sure there's also stuff that could be deferred in order for us to focus on the cleanup, which, you know, is probably top of mind of people. So I don't know if that's an option.
CAO?
First to, through yourself, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Fisher, the staff are not able to prepare a report in time for the April 16th meeting. The deadline is this Thursday. And as I noted earlier in the meeting, we simply do not have the capacity at this time to research a solution. And it's likely that we won't even be able to come up with who the contractor would be. We will need more time to come up with a solution. I have no objection to having a special meeting of council to predate May 2nd. I would point out that as it is, we have canceled the open house that was scheduled for, I believe, next week, because we simply don't have the capacity to prepare for it and stage it and pull it off. So we are in a work overload. Like currently, staff are not able to perform their day-to-day duties. A majority of our day is spent in this emergency response. So I would beg to council that we do need a little bit more time. We can't meet the April 16th date to report to council on what the solution will be.
Counselor Garwood?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. On those comments there and just listening to the conversation around the table, what if we were to go with the Tuesday, April 22nd as the meeting date, but we amend the motion slightly to include an enhanced communication plan to the residents outlining exactly what council will be discussing on the 22nd, what our hopes are, and therefore we are advising the residents that we are listening, that we are prioritizing this as the number one priority for the municipality at the time, while still working through the initial response stage, allowing staff the appropriate time, and while also communicating with the residents, just trying to balance both here.
And in that same attempt to balance it, understanding that the next meeting is the 16th, the agenda, if we were to have a meeting on the 22nd, the agenda would be the 17th or 18th. So communication would be made available to our residents in that fashion. So the communication would be there and the meeting to follow. So we need to put a date in here for staff for sure, and for our residents to know. So Councillor Fisher.
If we can't hit the 16th date, you know, I do firmly think we need to communicate to everyone that we are doing something, that something will be done. I also will say that you know, that's 2 weeks that's 2 weeks further in the distance. If we make a decision on that night, I think from that we should be ready to execute what we decide quickly, right? So if we have 2 weeks between now and decision time, we should be looking for a solution that we can execute quickly thereafter, right? So sort of time served, right? So.
And I think part of that could be that that is the meeting schedule date for the 22nd, but also that in there where it says that direct staff to report back on potential costs, but also to I know it's not the procurement, not the procurement process, but to start to look into who's available. Director Harvey, what kind of direction are you looking for here? You can hear what
For you, Mayor Coughlin, if I might suggest, if council's of the opinion that they want a resolution to move forward on this, staff are perhaps, in order to expedite this, if there was a resolution such that there was an upset limit as it relates to what staff could spend, we could move forward and do this quickly and then report back as it relates to that. I'm not sure if that's, I'm just looking at options so that we can move this forward quicker. I'll leave that with you for a comment.
Thank you. And the concern I have with that is I have no idea what it's going to cost. So I mean, I could throw a number at you, much like other municipalities do to solve things, but it needs to be accurate and it needs to ensure that it's going to get what our residents are coming forward with. So I think that just initiating what the availability is of the grapple and dump trucks to try and, you know, at least get those phone calls out there that we are looking to, if they're going to be finishing up in another municipality, if we can get them, just like you guys did for everything that we secured, just that the intent of council is to have a plan. So to try and secure, I know we have to procure, but if we can try and secure the resources in advance. Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I'm just going to put it out there. These are extraordinary circumstances. I don't think the procurement bylaw does permit council to, exactly. So what I would suggest is that if staff comes back with a viable operational plan with some figures attached to it, that council as a whole can just give the blessing and they can get on with it. Because to do the procurement policy at this particular juncture, I think would just add so much time to it. At least that means that on the 22nd, we might, hopefully we'll be in a position to say, let's do it. And by Tuesday or Wednesday or whenever staff are ready to go into recovery mode, we're doing it. And it can start in one area and work its way around, because ultimately this stuff's just sitting on the boulevard. You know, really, that's the reality of it, is it's sitting on the boulevard waiting to be picked up. So that would be my suggestion, just in case. I'm sure you realize that, Mayor Coughlin, but I was just sitting here thinking about council has the ability to do that.
Thank you. And staff is already through as you'll see, the chippers that are already out on the side of the roads that did not come to council. So no, we are not going through the full procurement process in order to get this done, but we still do need to reach out to make sure that we can secure. Right, so edited, we have that council hereby directs staff to report back on the potential costs, funding sources, methods, and established timelines in assisting residents in a cleanup effort of roadside brush debris by April 22nd, 2025, and that staff report on the details and qualified potential contractors, services provided, and potential, no, the costing's already in there. Yep. And then the second part is the consideration of waiving burn permit fees for agricultural properties with the focus on cleanup effort for prioritized settlement areas. Is there anything missing? Okay, there's the hands. I'm going to go to Chief Kirk and then back down to CAO.
Through you, Mayor Coughlin, can I suggest that in the resolution that there's a timeline on the free open burn permits? Whether it be a month or 2 months, and then we can get back to normal.
And Chief Kirk, rather than you reporting back on the free open burn permits, can this resolution, is this something that the fire department is supportive of, or is this something that you need to have more consideration for? Because we could simply just say that the fee for burn permits be suspended until such a date, and then we don't have to come back to it again.
We're good with the fees for open air burn permits, not recreational permits.
And a timeline appropriate for that, I will turn back to you again. We can always reassess it too. So if we just do.
I would suggest 2 months.
And then, so that would not require anybody reporting back, and that open air burn permits be, the fee for open air burn permits be suspended for 60 days. That satisfies? Councillor Fisher, that satisfies? Councillor Fisher?
And that would be effective now? Yeah, okay. Yeah.
He's looking at, I was in the other day and got so many burn permits. That's perfect. So the consideration, no, so it's that, and that open burn permits be, the fee for open burn permits be suspended for 60 days. Waived. Chief Kirk?
Through you, Mayor, they will still require permit because all the rules are on the back of that permit. So
And it's the
And-
fee. So the inspection and that part
Yep.
would still have to take place, but
Yep.
the fee for open air permits be waived for 60 days. Question?
I'm working myself through the steps because I'll be applying for one of these. And I know at the end of the permit, I pay. And so I just wonder how problematic this is going to be, or how quickly, because it's effective today, how quickly is IT going to be able to update that?
Making it immediately is going to be an issue. With the process, if you're having an open burn fire, we have to inspect the property to make sure you're burning what you say you're burning, because we've found lots of contraventions, and that it's not too close to a structure and you have a water source. That's the big key issues. It is going to increase our workload, but again, we're in favor of that.
Councilor Moore?
Thank you. So maybe we just add that you have to physically come into the building and apply in person. No online for this, for now.
Deputy French?
Just through you, Mayor Coughlin, I believe we can set it up how we have in the past without paying. You still apply online. It has to come to prevention to be approved. They will come out and inspect it. It's then approved. You will get an email, or they could print off the permit and bring it while they do the inspection at your property. If that clears that up a bit for you.
Hmm. Anything further to the resolution? We have our date, we have the report coming back, and we have the fees being waived. CAO, I skipped right over you. My apologies.
Thank you, your worship. And I note that a response was never provided to Councillor Alexander to her suggestion. And it was a good and helpful suggestion. Because the council the regularly scheduled council last time around was canceled, everything from that agenda is moved forward to the next agenda. So it's a busy agenda. And the preference would be, let's move on with the normal course of business. And staff will make every effort to report back by the date in the resolution in terms of a plan and a communications program as well, so that we can keep the public informed in terms of the cleanup.
Not seeing anything further. I would need a mover and seconder that council hereby directs staff to report back on the potential costs, funding sources, methods, and established timelines in assisting residents in a cleanup effort for roadside brush debris by April 22nd, 2025. And that staff report back on the details of qualified potential contractors and services provided, and that the fee for open burn permit be waived for 60 days to allow focus on cleanup efforts. I'm just going to scratch that last part, the prioritized. And I have this moved by Councillor Fisher, seconded by Councillor Moore. Anything further, council? All those in favor? And that has carried. And I need a mover and seconder for the confirmation bylaw, please. I have Deputy Cabral and Councillor Alexander. That bylaw 2025-029 to confirm and adopt the proceedings of council at the special meeting held on April 7th, 2025, listed here and be signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk. All those in favor? That has carried. And a mover and seconder for adjournment, please. Councillor Garwood and Councillor Thompson. That the special meeting of the Township of Springwater does now adjourn at 7:37 p.m. to meet again on regular meeting on April 16th, 2025 at 6:30 p.m. All those in favor? And that is carried.